Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Yountville Town Council meeting for Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Durham?
Here.
Councilmember Moeller?
Here.
Vice Mayor Dorman? Mayor Dunbar?
Here.
Please let the record reflect that Councilmember Dornbecker is excused.
Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We do have one change to the agenda. I know that several of the folks here in the audience, while you're welcome to stay the entire meeting, are here for an item that's going to be part of our staff informational report. And so I've asked Town Manager to move his report up from item 11. We will hear that item between items 7 and 8, just so you know, so that we just make it a little bit earlier in the meeting for all of you folks that are here. I'm making that recommendation to the agenda. With that modification, is there a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Did you push the button?
I did.
I'm not seeing that on mine.
I'll second. It's not there.
Okay. We're just going to do a voice vote. All in
Yes,
favor?
yes, please.
Aye.
All right. That's good. We got through the agenda. All right. Next up, we have two proclamations this evening, and one is a very special proclamation for all of us. It's not very often that we have a business that celebrates 25 years of success and commitment to community. We have that opportunity tonight with the 25th anniversary coming up this weekend of the French Laundry. And so I invite Chef Thomas Keller and others in his team to please join me at the podium. Yes, Laura, you have to get up. Come on, Michael. Let's do it. So if you don't say yes to the chef, you have to say yes to the mayor at least.
Yes, Mayor.
Got to wait another 25 years.
We weren't taught how to say no.
Yeah.
You're listed in here. You have to stand up.
Stand up. Thank you, Mayor. You could do it, I can't.
That's right. This is a proclamation recognizing the French Laundry for its 25th anniversary. Whereas the French Laundry opened for restaurant service in 1978 under Don and Sally Schmidt, who renovated the building from its original uses as a saloon, and then a steam laundry. Whereas world-renowned chef Thomas Keller and a group of investors purchased the French Laundry on May 1st, 1994. With the assistance of manager Laura Cunningham guiding the dining room, service opened on July 6th, 1994, serving classic French cuisine with the finest quality ingredients and a focus on impeccable guest service. Whereas the French Laundry received its initial 4-star rating from the San Francisco Chronicle restaurant critic Michael Bauer on September 11th, 1994, and continues 25 years later to remain as one of the San Francisco Chronicle's top 100 Bay Area restaurants. Whereas the French Laundry has garnered recognition from international organizations, including the prestigious Relais and Chateau and Traditions Equalité, publications including the #1 global ranking from Restaurant Magazine in 2003 and 2004, the prestigious 3-star rating from the Michelin Guide, which it has maintained since 2007, the Outstanding Restaurant Award from the James Beard Foundation in 2005, 5 Diamond Award from the American Automobile Association since 2005, along with numerous awards for exceptional wine and food service and culinary expertise. It's a long list. I know that's only part of it.
We haven't gotten to the meat of it yet.
That's right. Whereas the French Laundry has remained on Restaurant Magazine's World's 50 Best Restaurants, Best in the Americas list since 2003, and has continued to receive Wine Spectator's Grand Award. Chef Keller has received the Outstanding Restaurateur from the James Beard Foundation, and several of his protégés have earned similar acclaim over more than 2 decades. Whereas Chef Keller and his team were instrumental in establishing Yountville as the culinary capital of the Napa Valley and as an international destination for gourmands and foodies. Whereas Thomas Keller is not only a local restaurateur, but he is also a Yountville resident who has contributed to the town's social fabric with his involvement in many community-based efforts. That list includes renovating the world's finest Little League snack shack at Yountville's Canachero Field, supporting Yountville Elementary School and its children's culinary garden, and serving Thanksgiving dinner to military veterans in the Pathway Home Post-Traumatic Stress Treatment Program. Chef Keller is the recent recipient of the Connection Award from the Veterans Home Association, and he continues to support Yountville veterans, along with numerous Napa County nonprofit organizations. Whereas Chef Keller's community generosity is highlighted each year on Locals Night, when prices are reduced for Yountville residents to original 1994 levels. Likely the only 3 Michelin star restaurant in the world that shares its unparalleled fine dining experience with locals in such a unique way. Now therefore be it resolved, I, John F. Dunbar, on behalf of the Yountville Town Council and our entire community, recognize Chef Thomas Keller's culinary artisanship and community engagement. Congratulate the entire team at the French Laundry for its 25th anniversary on July 6, 2019, and offer our best wishes for continued success. Congratulations. May we pose for a photo? Chef, please, if you would share a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Dunbar. Thank you, Councilman. Members, very much appreciate the recognition. On behalf of my team at the French Laundry, both since 1994 up until today. You know, many young men and women have come through our restaurant here in Yountville and have been impacted in so many different ways. Not only the young team members that have come through our restaurant, but also our guests. We've had, I can't count how many people who have come to our restaurant, come to this beautiful town to create memories for themselves. And I'm very grateful and blessed to be part of a community, part of a restaurant, part of a team that is so committed to others. And we think about what we do, and Laura and I were having a conversation the other night just about this, and I said, well, we should maybe do something for ourselves, because for the past 40 years we've been doing things for others. Nonetheless, it's really what gets us excited and gets us started every day. I want to thank not only the team at the French Laundry, but those of you, some of you in the audience who've supported us over this past 2.5 decades. Certainly Judith Caldwell, one of the first people I met when I moved to Yountville, invited me to her house, and I think she cooked me spaghetti one night. It was wonderful. Certainly the Hoxies, who have been very supportive of everything we've done, has been one of our partners at the French Laundry since the very beginning. I remember Andy signing his check, and he has the most extraordinary handwriting I've ever seen of anybody. So thank you very much. Certainly Gwen and Peter for all of your contributions to not just to the restaurant, to myself, but so many people in our team that have really thrived in your community over at your garden. Michael Manello, of course, has been our general manager. He started in 1996 as a young commis, 1997 as a young commis, and has been with us ever since. But the one person that really changed my life and changed the restaurant was Laura Cunningham, and I just want to recognize her as a true partner and a true inspiration to everything that's happened at our restaurant for the past 25 years. Without Laura, the French Laundry wouldn't be the French Laundry. So thank you very much. I want to thank all of you and appreciate this beautiful proclamation. And we're very grateful to be here, and we're very grateful for the appreciation that you have for what we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chef.
I've got to go back to the restaurant, so I'm sorry I'm going to have to leave, but thank you.
The
I know we're
6 o'clock seating,
yeah,
we're waiting for you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to run with this, but again, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. No one's being seated right now, Michael. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Bye.
We have a second proclamation this evening that I will be reading from the dais. It is a proclamation in collaboration with the other municipalities in Napa County, and it's a Napa County collaboration to address climate change. Whereas in October 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a body organized by the United Nations to assess the science related to climate change, released a report which states that, quote, rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society, end quote, are required to limit the effects of climate change. Whereas the IPCC was created to provide policymakers with regular scientific assessments on climate change, its implications, and potential future risks, as well as to put forward adaptation and mitigation options. Whereas countywide efforts are additional and complementary to current statewide policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas the residents of Napa County have experienced economic and environmental effects of a changing climate and recognize that this represents a growing impact on health, safety, prosperity, basic services, and natural resources. Whereas elected officials and community leaders throughout Napa County recognize that decisive action is needed to reduce the effects of climate change, and the most practical and cost-effective solutions will come from countywide participation and coordination. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the jurisdictions of Napa County commit to working together to educate and mobilize regional partners and other local stakeholders to achieve comprehensive and sustained climate protective action. Signed by me. And this proclamation is going to be joined by proclamations from all the other cities and the county. Some have already taken this action, or they are about to either tonight or in the very near future. So we wanted to make sure that you are all aware that we are collaborating on this effort countywide. You'll also be hearing in a few items on the agenda that we'll be discussing the climate collaborative in the county and potentially appointing a member from this council to, or a couple of members to sit on that collaborative committee. So with that, we'll move on to item 6, which is our public comment on items not listed on the agenda. So it's a little bit of a unique situation since we do have a report coming from our town manager on the concerns about short-term rentals, and I know that many of you in the audience are here about that. You're welcome to hold your comments that you would normally be invited to give now until we hear a report from Steve, and then we have the ability for you to comment then. That's why I'm moving up that item to just a couple minutes from now. If there is anything other than that item that any of you in the audience would like to address the council on, now would be that time. I think we need to lower that microphone for you. If you would actually just swing it back toward the middle, then you're more in center of the camera. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My name is Darlene Scott. I'm a former Yountville resident, and I see lots of people up here and in the audience that I've known for decades from living here. I moved to Napa 4 years ago. But speaking on behalf of the members of Napa Climate Now, part of the greater 350 Bay Area community of climate activists, we congratulate Yountville and you, its town council, for participating in the proposed regional countywide climate actions. Napa County and the other cities in the county have proclaimed a countywide commitment to address climate change. This commitment recognizes the need for decisive near-term actions to reduce excess trapped heat and prevent further global warming. The next step is to determine what actions we undertake and how we obtain funding for them. The countywide commitment provides a process for doing this. by allowing all the jurisdictions to work together and share information and resources. Yountville already has created a climate action plan and can share this resource with the other jurisdictions. With this proclamation, Napa County becomes the 4th Bay Area county to have a countywide commitment to climate action, and one of the growing legion of cities, counties, and other government jurisdictions around the world who are mobilizing in recognition of our pressing climate emergency. We look forward to working with you and other members of our strong and diverse community to identify bold solutions to this existential threat. Thank you.
Thank you. And in case you don't stay until later in the meeting, know that I will be reporting out on the Climate Mayors Summit that I just attended last week. About 60 mayors from around the country met for an all-day summit on climate change and the types of partnerships that we have at the local level throughout the country. You can see that it'll be recorded. You don't have to stay if you don't want to, but you're welcome. Any other members of the audience like to speak during public comment? Seeing no one else coming forward, we'll move on to our consent calendar. And I believe we have a request from the Vice Mayor to pull item 7B.
Yes, thank you.
So I'll ask if there is a motion to approve items 7A and 7C.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. We'll, again, verbally, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. So item 7B, I believe the Vice Mayor has some questions of staff that she would like to get on the record.
Yes, thank you. And 7B is the amendment of our zoning, possible amendment of our zoning code to allow glass and bottle pouring. So I have questions here, and I think most of them are for our town attorney, but some of them also are for our planning director. So does a type O2 license holder, which our tasting rooms are, have to be engaged in the production of wine?
Yes, that's correct.
And so that means that any tasting room permit holder we have here in town has to actually produce wine.
Correct.
So under the proposed amendment, and then we also have our conditional use permits, it mentions in the definition winery products in the first line of the definition. What are winery products?
For the purposes of these wine tasting rooms, the winery products are wine. So this will be specifically for wine.
Thank you. And then again, under the conditional use permits that we already have, can any of our tasting rooms, without coming back to council for an amendment, can any of them operate as a wine collective or collaborative, which would mean selling taste glasses or bottles from other wineries?
So each existing use permit for a wine tasting room, with the exception of one, which is Heron House, the rest of them all would have to come back for an amendment to allow any more than one wine taste or one winery at that wine tasting room.
And then it also mentions the ordinance, both as it stands and as it would be amended, talks about a food pairing and that the tasting rooms are limited to food pairings. What is the definition of food pairing as it's used in the ordinance?
So there's really 4 limitations on what constitutes a food pairing. The first is it really has to be a pairing between food and wine, something like cheese, and that goes with a particular wine well. Other than that, it has to be ancillary to the wine itself, so it can't be the focus of the transaction. It really has to be supporting that wine. It cannot be prepared on site, and it cannot have any menu options attached to it. There cannot be meal service, anything like that. This is really something like cheese, nuts, a chocolate pairing, something like that complements the wine itself, not that is the primary part of the transaction.
And so under the proposed amendment and the conditional use permits, can a wine tasting room serve a plate of appetizers?
That would fall outside the definition of a wine and food pairing.
And under the amendment proposed and the use permits, can they serve, for example, if they're serving wine by the bottle or glass, can they serve a bowl of chips and dip?
No snacks, appetizers, anything outside what is specifically designed to highlight qualities of wine wouldn't be permitted.
Thank you. And I understand that the license numbers are different, 42 to this kind of stuff, but if the proposed amendment goes into effect, what is the real practical difference between a wine tasting room and, for example, what we do at RH Wine Vault?
I'd say we really look to the intent of an operator on how they want to use the space, and we look to the application and what's presented to the council. In the case of a bar is a place where you go to consume alcohol and to have a good time with friends, whereas wine tasting is more about the education and introducing people to your wines with the goal of obtaining wine club members. And so we see that as an important distinction.
And the proposed amendment does not change the fact that these tasting rooms come to us in their application as tasting rooms, and that is captured by their use permit.
Yes, it is.
And then I have two kind of summary questions, whoever wants to take them. Are you confident that the proposed ordinance plus the use permits we have will allow our council and any councils that come after us, because I'm looking to the future on this, any councils that come after us have authority to say whether we want or do not want a tasting room that now operates as a single tasting room to become a collective?
Yeah, yes, certainly. This ordinance does retain that control for council, for this council and future councils.
And on the same sort of thing, the question of how much confidence do we have that sort of the food pairings, do we have confidence that we retain authority to, if a tasting room goes over the line on what is a food pairing, we retain authority to rein that back in?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Thank
And I'm
you.
gonna
Those were
offer-
my questions.
We almost got through the whole thing without Steve talking,
No,
but
I'm going
here
to
he
give you,
goes.
there's a couple, I think, points that need to be amplified based on the questions you're asking. And for clarity, this proposed ordinance amendment does nothing, it changes nothing to the existing tasting rooms use permit. And I think it's important the way you're phrasing the questions, that the public understands that whatever limitations they have or whatever the abilities they have on those areas, this particular amendment doesn't change any of that. And more importantly, it protects the things that the council would need to do. If somebody wants to come back, and you saw it at the last council meeting, a tasting room wanted to change its hours of operations, it needed to come back to you. So I just want to, the process is structurally there to give the outcome. If an existing tasting room wants to change its business model from a single tasting room to a collective, it cannot do that automatically. It must come back and apply for a use permit amendment, with the exception of the one the council already granted. So I'm just offering that kind of a more direct, because there are different conditions in all of the various tasting rooms, as you know, and none of them are changing with the adoption of this ordinance amendment.
Right, and thank you for that. And just to say, yes, the basis of my questions is I want to make sure that if we add bottle and glass, nothing else changes in the operation of the tasting rooms, and we do not lose any authority to say if this isn't working, if there's too much food or not enough food. So that's exactly the point of my questions, and I am happy to make a motion whenever the time comes.
Okay, and I'll entertain that just after I actually introduce Ryan Reed, who, since we've heard from Ryan and his expertise, is our assistant town attorney. People listening at home know it's not Gary's voice you're hearing, it's Ryan. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. And sometimes Gary sits there an entire meeting and says nothing, so you got to chime right in. So welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sandra, thank you also for your responses. So, Vice Mayor?
So I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 485, amending Title 17 zoning of the Yountville Municipal Code to remove references to, quote, wine tasting bars, close quote, as allowable uses in zones where currently allowed, and amend the definition of, quote, wine tasting room, close quote, to remove 2-ounce pour restriction.
Do we need to recognize that this is the second reading of this ordinance, Michelle, or can you do that for the record? Okay. So that is the motion? Yes. Right. And is there a second to that motion?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So we don't have any presentations. Item 8, item 9, no public hearings. So we will jump now to item 11, which is the staff informational report as it relates to short-term rentals. And as I mentioned earlier, after we hear from the town manager, I'll welcome any questions or comments from the audience. This allows us to actually engage in dialogue. If you had spoken during the public comment earlier, we wouldn't really be able to respond to you because it would be considered a non-agendized item. So that's why we're doing it this way. So Steve?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. And first I want to acknowledge that we have received a letter, email from a number of folks. And in addition, we've been having over the last month or so a extended conversation and dialogue with an even greater number of parties. And also I need to clarify a few things just in general. The town does not have a vacation rental program or permit. The town has a property rental permit. And that is, it's something I want to make sure everybody understands. That is similar to a home business occupation or a business license permit for the purpose of renting out your property. So I just want to be really clear because I have in some of the conversation people refer to the fact I have my vacation rental permit. No, you don't. We do not issue a vacation rental permit. We issue a property rental permit. And we have just shy of 300 individual properties with over 500 total units covered by our rental registration process. So we've had some good communications, and I think some folks have offered some input. We recognize that the environment has changed with regard to rental registration, and I'm going to say that because Yountville does not allow any rental of less than 30 days. Just does not allow it. Now, I'm not going to be naive and tell anybody here on the dais or in the audience that we don't have illegal short-term vacation rentals. We heard that loud and clear during the general plan. It was a community concern. I also want to point out that we have a number of people that are straightforward, like yourselves, most of the people in the audience I know, that are following. But I also know we have people that don't follow the rules because every year or two we end up fining and citing several people. So I just want to indicate the issue is real, and in fact it's amplified for those of you that regionally, front page of the Register today talking about issues with vacation rentals, tracking, managing, and more fun, at least for those of you that maybe not for all of it, it's in the topic and subject of a grand jury investigation and report recommending that there be more significant effort made on managing and enforcing vacation rentals. I'm just kind of sharing that all as a broader perspective. And then what I do want to point out is we have found, and I think some of you that are VRBO and HomeAway host will probably acknowledge they're not easy people to deal with, especially to try to get somebody to communicate with. We have been working with them. We've been communicating with them and trying to get some conformance from them as to what they could do. We had a number of things that they thought they were in agreement. We've asked them to put it in writing, and then we will send them back a conformance letter. Many of you in the crowd were part of the email last week where I indicated that we were successful in resolving the issue with Airbnb. Airbnb is back and they are listing Yountville properties, and we're going to show a demonstration of that shortly. There's three elements that the town is looking for in an opportunity to show that they're complying. And I want to talk about a misconception that we've seen in some of the correspondence, that the town is asking or demanding that the platforms enforce the town's ordinances. That's actually far, far, far from the truth. The town has and will continue to be the responsible party for enforcing violations when we enforce it. What we have put together is a tool that says the platforms, and I want to be really clear, there are 20-some plus platforms or more that facilitate vacation rentals. So there's a large range. What we've indicated is that the platforms have a responsibility to comply with local Yountville regulations because they're conducting business in Yountville. And I want to be really clear on that a business can't do something illegal in the conduct of it. So a business that is allowing the booking and the transaction, if you will, of short-term rentals is it's abetting and allowing somebody to do something that's not illegal in Yountville. So the three elements that we're looking for are, one, some way that the host regulates and takes responsibility for ensuring that a rental of less than 30 days does not occur. The second element is that they need to provide an opportunity for the host to include their town rental registration number. And the third element is that they agree to provide communications and reports with us on transaction activity. So some of you in the audience recall last week's email or update where we indicated that Airbnb, we had reached an agreement and that they are resolved. We're actually going to show if we're ready to go.
And actually, before you get into that, maybe while you're getting ready, could you just back up a touch for the folks that aren't in the room, that have been on the email chains with you for a few months now, why we're talking about this very specific thing, that there were some property owners that had been deactivated from some of the rental platforms?
Well, I still can't talk as to the reason, but there are, and I'm also have a hand site and a link to the top 10 rental websites if any of you are interested. There's some great information. But basically what has happened is the town of Yountville is we're certainly in the first tier of agencies responding to the results of the Santa Monica HomeAway court case, which allows for and requires that, it basically said that the booking companies can't argue that they're not involved in the business and transaction and they're just a technology that facilitates it, but that they're actually a business and they have an entity and they're responsible for the transaction and they're making considerable millions in the process. So this is where we're at. So when the council adopted its more recent ordinance, HomeAway and VRBO, which are both owned by Expedia, chose to delist anybody renting in Yountville rather than comply with the ordinance. Airbnb subsequently did the same thing a few days later. There was no communication from VRBO and HomeAway to the town, and most of the recipients, the host, received a kind of, I'm going to use the word wimpy, kind of an email, and several of you forwarded it to us. And we were successful, but it took a lot of work. We had to go through the various host compliance networks to finally work our way up to get to a real person that would talk to us. And I'm sure some of you have experienced that more directly. So I don't disagree with your frustration, but I also think some of the frustration needs to be addressed at the platforms. But like I say, I'm going to focus on the good news, because the good news is Airbnb has figured out how to do it and comply. So we're going to take a look at that.
So a couple of as you're working on this, I'll try to fill in. So a couple of the platforms that are most popular, I will say, delisted they've done that in other cities as well because they basically didn't want to deal with smaller communities that had, or large communities that prohibited rentals under 30 days. And you've found a format change that one of those platforms was finally willing to make that just recognizes that anyone that's using that platform can't try to illegally book for under 30 days.
I think, part of the effort was finally getting to people that we could work with. And like I say, we are now working with a senior attorney with Expedia. She has, I will just say, it's really challenging, not her and not the issues, but the amount of time. I mean, she's not available to have another follow-up conversation until July 8th. So that's the challenge that we're having. But we worked with Airbnb, and there we go. Airbnb initially took nope, we're not going to comply. Now, and then we finally got to somebody, and they said, no, we'll work. We need to do a team, and there's a little bit of programming. So the elements that what we've been told is two things. One, Expedia and HomeAway have acknowledged that they can comply, and they're working on a technical fix. They won't commit to when. And they won't commit to when Yountville's a priority. So in one of those conversations, Mayor, they have multiple agencies. There's over 480 jurisdictions, more if you include the unincorporated county areas of some of the resort communities. And they've made a business decision of where to comply and where to put their energy. So I can't speak for them as to why, but certainly I think the surmising is that the 10 to 15 host sites that we're finding in Yountville, and I'll just point that out, 10 or 15 out of 300 approaching rental registration. So it's a different subset. For those of you that have filled out the application, we don't ask if it's a vacation rental. Now that may be something, but I do want to show, because like I say, the good news is Airbnb is up. If you aren't one of their customers, they shared with me a copy of their reactivation email. I'm going to use this one. This is Toby Halliday's property. He was one of the persons that many of you will recognize because he's on your email thread. And what we're going to show now is you check availability. You'll see it's blocked out. He's managed to get a few things already booked. Oh, there we go. Let's try and do a short-term vacation. So the site won't allow you to do anything less than 30 days. And that's what, for us, that's one of the critical components, because then the sites were concerned because just like there were penalties for you all if we enforce, if the site allowed a transaction, they would have been subject to a fine of up to $1,000. So they chose to delist rather than risk having an occurrence. So I do believe we are going to get there with the Expedia controlled companies. I just can't give you a timeline because it doesn't seem like meeting your interest is something that they're in a hurry to do. But they have communicated to us that they think they will be able to do it. It's just a matter of when. For those of you that aren't on our email update list, I will let you know the results of our conversation on July 8th. But I do want to share, the things that we've asked for are not unrealistic. Expedia has acknowledged that. It's just a question of when they get to implement it. And if you'd like, I'm more than happy to distribute the top 10 vacation rental list links, because there are other platforms for you to consider. Again, our job here is not to tell you which platform's appropriate for you, but that there are platforms that are willing to comply with the town's ordinance. That's really all I have to add at this point.
Thank you. So before I invite members of the audience, I'll ask if there are any questions from council on the report. Anything at this point? Okay. Anyone in the audience, would you like to either share questions, comments? Please come on up to the podium.
Steve, now you blew my whole speech apart, son. Mayor, council members. I'm Peter Jacobson. My wife Gwen and I live at 22 Talent Lane in Yountville. We have lived here for 36 years. And recently we bought a piece of property, 18 Landy Way, just across the fence from our little farm, so that if we can't walk upstairs in our old age, we get to stay in a one-story house and we can still hang out at the farm. In the meantime, we've been renting that house intermittently for 30-plus days. But now I get to the part where Steve's interjection, and actually I, of course, have to acknowledge Steve and the town for being as conscientious as possible, but Steve working very hard to see if he can make it all work out based on that first letter that probably seemed like an excellent idea, or is an excellent idea, but at the same time everything seemed to go awry when the hosting sites decided that the best answer for them was no answer, and to just close it all down. And we're still living with that. I appreciate Steve's optimism and actually all his hard work, but we're still living with that. He mentioned Airbnb, and it's kind of them to do what they're doing and helping us, but of course they're going to go public relatively soon, and they're motivated at this point in time. I'm not convinced the other ones are, but I would never second guess their motivation. But I think what all it is for a number of homeowners, listed homeowners, wrote you all an email. Thank you for pointing that out. I was one of the signers of those, and other members of the audience are also signers of those. And what we are asking, we wanted to acknowledge the problems that it's caused, primarily for people that do these 30-day plus rentals. We also want to note that the only people being punished by the intention of the memo are the people that are legally renting their places. You've long ago driven the illegal rentals underground. They don't rent on those sites anymore. You've got your special ways of going in and poking them to see if they'll fall for a trick. So you're only hurting the legal people at this point in time, or it only has hurt. But what I want to do now that Steve's explained the moving forward is that Airbnb sounds like an excellent site. Some people like it, other people don't. At the same time, it doesn't really fit for the type of quality rental people we're after. The people that come to Yountville and stay for 30-plus days usually don't go to an Airbnb, which is more of a rapid turnover site. So a VRBO is the most important one for us. And so what we're really sort of asking, let me see where I have my notes here. We want to acknowledge and appreciate the town manager's diligent efforts to negotiate with the websites. But as I noted, now it's 6+ weeks when we've been delisted. We're essentially in internet purgatory at this point. And also, actually, the other thing that frustrates a lot of us homeowners, permit holding homeowners, that the town has little, as far as we know, could figure out, communicated with us rental permit holders, the ones that are most effective. We were never asked about, we were never informed about the town's decisions and actions, or at least any way we could easily see. I realize that public posting of many of these things there, but things turned over relatively quickly and all of us missed it. But I think what we'd like to do is be part of the solution. That's the other thing. And we've asked that in the thing. It's like we realize we're all in this together. We're all very proud of our town. We're very proud of the people that come to visit it. And we do think we make a contribution to the community and the businesses in the community with the people that we bring in. But we would like to be part of the solution, which means that we'd like to be brought up to speed or informed about, or if there's a special group that's supposed to be in charge of thinking about how to control illegal rentals, we want to be there. And the next letters that go out, we'd love to know a little bit about it, whether we have an impact or whether we just end up being forewarned and prepared. So if you would, please consider including us or put it on an agenda that if you can include registered permit, what's the proper name, property rental permit holders, including us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sandra, are you able to speak to the conversations that occurred during the general plan, public workshops, or any other meetings that preceded the ordinance?
Sure,
I'm not asking for dates. I'm just talking generally to get a sense of the dialogue.
Yes, so we conducted workshops and community surveys, and we heard a consensus from the community that there was a concern over illegal vacation rentals, something less than 30 days, and the erosion of the community, and their desire was to have them better managed, to have the town do more, and to, as in this effort to preserve quality of life in Yountville.
I remember it was kind of under the umbrella of, can the town do something about second home ownership and empty homes that are kind of eroding what some people feel is the neighborhood energy in their neighborhoods, but also there was a concern raised by residents about rental activity on their streets. And so that was really, I think, wasn't it the impetus for the ordinance being written or modified?
Yes.
Okay. Steve?
Just for the audience that's here, we have a lot of tools that can help you stay informed. So I'm going to give you a plug to go onto our website, sign up for eNotifier. You can get our agendas. And then, it's an easy thing for you to decide it's not something you're interested in. The Yountville Sun does a good job, but there are some things we can do to try to help you. One of the challenges we face, again, is since this is not a short-term rental, we also, in a small town, we get why did you send me a bunch of stuff that doesn't pertain to me? So when we look at a volume, we may take advantage of some of your offer. Maybe we can modify our permit form to see if there's a box that says you short-term, or I shouldn't say short-term. Short-term we don't want to use because we don't allow it. But if you do vacation rental and then platforms, but again, I want to point out that that's not the intent of the rental registration. Anybody that's renting in Yountville has to apply. It's really a business license situation. So there are ways to try to make sure that you're informed. We have to be very honest. In no way did we anticipate the outcome. This is a business decision that they're making rather than the town. The town is not forcing them to make any bans. The irony in some ways is the town attorney and I had a meeting scheduled a week after the date that these cancellation or delisting notices came out, because we were talking about our several-month strategy of how we were going to be working with them before we would be doing anything. Never in our experience did we anticipate them doing that. And I realize there's different platforms. Like I said, we've got a link with, there's 20 that we're aware of, different markets. And I think that's all a business decision you all need to look at in terms of where, Craigslist, Zillow, there's a ton of them. But you have to figure out the ones that are appropriate for your property and the expense associated with it. That's your business decision, not the town. The only thing that we're going to require is that, one, you don't allow transactions to happen, and two, that the platform doesn't.
Other members of the audience have any questions or comments tonight? Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
If you could drop that microphone down so I could see you.
My name is Esther Lamb, and I'm speaking on behalf of my husband, Christopher Parks. I've owned and lived at 6719 Jefferson Street since 1999. We also own the rental property next door to us at 2131 Starkey since 2001. This is the first time in over 20 years of being part of this community and as a resident of Yountville to address this town council meeting. And we offer our rental property for the minimum 30 days or more. So Chris and I are concerned homeowners. As you know, we've signed the letter to town council and town staff last week, and we really appreciated the courtesy of a reply from Marita Dornbach, a town council member, that she would be away until August 3rd. And we thank you, Steve, for the staff report addressing this topic, and for Mayor to move this agenda around so that we can have a dialogue on it. As I understand, public forum, we just speak and there's no exchange. So that's also very much appreciated. And we some of the suggestions and updates are great, you know, about Airbnb, but unfortunately, or fortunately, we only have been working with VRBO because that's the market that we want. You know, for 30 days or more, people that are affluent enough to afford staying in Yountville. And, you know, we've always had utmost confidence in town council, so we've never engaged in attending agendas meetings. And, but, you know, we felt that town council always had the best interests of the town. And also we hope for the residents who are also contributing to the general fund along with the TOT folks. So our 30-day renters do contribute, and I apologize if I'm repeating everything that you already know, but it's important for us, and we understand and agree that town has to address the illegal short-term rentals of less than 30+ days. We just don't want the policing policies to arbitrarily impact our 30-day plus legal rental activities. So, you know, with all the exchanges of emails and what have you, dialogues, and with all good intentions, we're trying to find a solution that is mutually satisfactory to both town council, town manager, and us as the legal rental owners. So the economic impact, I don't have to tell you, you know, about loss of our revenue, and also for town, because these folks are spending a lot of money in town if they're staying over 30 days versus just a weekend. I just had one question, why town is requiring VRBO to report. They're already doing the 30 days minimum. They're already listing our toys permit number. Why are we requesting that they want to know who's renting, how much, how long they're staying, and how much they're paying? You know, is there a purpose that we can address or provide town if that's the information? Because I don't think the folks that are in town that are renting on VRBO or Airbnb are significant that we couldn't provide a report.
Well, Esther, that's a great question, and I'll give you a real simple answer. That's the necessary documentation to go after illegal vacation rentals, is we need to be able to show that the transactions occurred. So the transaction records and information is part of that. We're not, some of the stuff you mentioned, that's not our interest, but we're interested in, did the transaction occur, who it was, and the property owner. So they do have to agree to provide information. The biggest thing that will prevent, again, I was going to say, is if they will put a firm block on. See, VBR has not committed to doing a firm block. So they won't, you know, you can go in and work around, and that's what we're really needing to do. So again, I think, you know, and I don't know if it's appropriate, but I think some of your energy needs to be directed to VBRO and the staff there, because they're the ones that can help you, because they've told us they understand there's a technical fix. I think they need to hear from you that, you know, why aren't we as customers of VRBO and HomeAway more important for you to work on resolving this?
I understand, but we are a very small community compared to Santa Monica, a larger rental community. So are they going to report? But, you know, as you said at the April 2nd meeting, I went back and looked at it, you know, there's different ways of gaming the system or playing by the rules. And so to try to find out from VRBO if there's somebody gaming the system, you know, as a property owner, I could block out the whole month and then turn around and rent it for a weekend. Not that I would do that. I take
but
great
actually,
pleasure.
Esther, I have to point out, people do that. And again, it comes back. And in fact, you can go online right now and find 2 Yountville properties on VRBO under Napa. And then you pull in, and in the details, they actually have their address and description. So I just share that with you because people do a lot of creative things. And again, the requirement we have, in order to prosecute somebody and to go after them, at the end of the day, we have to have that. So that's the reporting part. And that's the part that VRBO is still struggling a little bit on that, as well as the blocks.
Well, I just would like to reiterate that I think, as Steve Tokochi said, for most people, that are following the rules of the April 2nd meeting. I think it was in response to Town Council Member Kerry Dorman, that there's very little change in behavioral impact for them. On the contrary, this has been a major negative impact for those of us playing by the rules, with the unintended consequence of the suppression of our listings. So thank you for consideration and in helping us get this matter resolved soon.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And what I'm also hearing, I want to recognize on behalf of the council that those of you renting, whether it's picking a particular platform like VRBO, recognizing that there is a clientele that you want to attract that fits our community when they're coming here to visit. And so that's very much appreciated. I think we're also talking about an ordinance that applies for year-long rentals, folks that live in homes for many, many years. It's not just about vacation rentals, and this program is really meant to weed out those that don't comply. And unfortunately, in some laws, those that comply are the ones that are more negatively impacted than the ones that are cheating. And that's very unfortunate. We try to figure out the best way to eliminate the negative impacts on those that are doing the right thing. And I think based on all the email exchanges and the conversations, I know staff has put in a significant amount of time to try to work out solutions, not only with all of you as property owners, but also with the large companies that can't find the time, as Esther, as you just said, we're too small for them to care. And that's really unfortunate because every one of you cares as much as any other renter in a large city. So also, just so you recognize, I know that at least two of the council members, based on a conversation I had with the town manager, did reply to you all. We have to be careful that we don't all reply to you and create what would be considered legally a serial meeting outside of a public meeting. So we just have to be careful that that happens. If you wonder why all five of us don't respond to all of the emails from all of you, that's likely the reason, is that we have to be careful that we don't have a dialogue that turns into a serial meeting, which they consider anytime communications between 3 or more council members happen outside of a public meeting like this, it's illegal for us to do that. So we will typically err on the side of not responding if we know that someone else has, or even if we don't know if somebody else has. Council members sometimes choose to not respond unless it is in a public forum like this. So just to share that with you. We all are getting the information you're all sending, and we're certainly taking it into consideration. Any other members of the audience like to comment? Welcome.
Hi.
You're a regular attendee these days.
Yeah, this is 3 meetings in a row. I can't believe it. Yeah, considering how much I hate doing this. Well, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the status report and the little exhibition that we had here. Unfortunately, the world's as I understand it, doesn't work like that. When people go online, they don't pick an address and then try and decide whether they can book a short-term or a long-term rental. The way people approach the internet is that they will go on the internet and they'll say either Napa Valley or Yountville, and then the next line will be what dates they want. Now they can put down 30 days or 31 days, or they can put 15 or 29 days, whatever. But under this hard block thing that you're trying to achieve, if they put anything less than 30 days, the Yountville houses that are vacant will not show up. So I don't know how to explain it, but it'd be like, you know, a retail store in Yountville. So you tell the retail store, you have to block up your storefront window. We don't want people looking in there. And this is what you actually, the 31-day block, this is what it actually
I actually
does.
have to disagree with you because that's not exactly, that's not how it works. If you were watching the demonstration, we brought it into Yountville, but what we're showing is when you went in to try to do something less than, the properties were all showing. There were 4 properties actually, 2, I saw another one added. So the properties are coming up, and then when you go to put in, that's why we showed you, they were showing July and August booked, and then they had their next opening in September. What we were showing is there that it would not take a week reservation. So all of those properties show up when you're searching. In this case, it was Airbnb Yountville, and we just happened to jump to that part. But the way you described it, Mr. Cantor, works, and that's exactly, in this case with the site, you would see whatever number of properties that are listed on Airbnb, you could evaluate which one, price, make a decision. So that's, that's exactly how it's set up.
Yeah, well, I was on the phone at 9 o'clock last night with VRBO, and that's what the scenario I gave you is exactly how they described it to me.
VRBO, I want to be really clear. For those of you that are exclusively focused on VRBO, until they get a little more further along, it's not a good choice for you because they're not choosing to do business in Yountville. So that's the part I want to point out. We're working with them to try to resolve it and see where we can have some compromise. But right now, VRBO and HomeAway, which are both owned by Expedia, your point is they're choosing not to list anything in Yountville with a 94599 zip code because they don't want to run the risk of being in violation because they don't have their limitations in place. So you're absolutely right. If you're on VBR, what we were showing you is the Airbnb platform. Airbnb platform is up. They're accepting Yountville property rentals, and I'm just saying, for those of you that are worried, it may not be the best platform for you, but it may be one that you want to try for a month or so and see where it goes until we can get VRBO and HomeAway settled. I don't know what else to offer.
Let's try the platform that you suggested in the meeting of May 21. You said, we could go to Craigslist. So if we go to Craigslist, just as an example, Craigslist just puts 2 parties together. They don't actually do anything. So whatever you're trying to achieve with VRBO is not going to be achieved with Craigslist.
No, I'm going to put it slightly different because this is a marketing decision. The platforms do more, and I know where you're headed with this, but that's not the town's. You're using the platform to do the transaction, cover the insurance, take the money. You don't have to do that. There are real estate agents, there's firms. I'm just saying, but I understand. Zillow is another place that you can use. It depends on what you're doing. I'm just saying, right now, VRBO and HomeAway aren't compliant. There's other tools. Some of them are just simply marketing, and then you've got to do your own rental agreement, collect the money, and that's why I'm saying certainly some of the platforms have an advantage, but it's not the only way to lease or rent property.
Oh, okay. No point arguing about it. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else like to comment or ask any questions about this? So next steps, Steve, what are the next steps? You mentioned July 8th, the conversation with an attorney, and then what's happening going forward?
It's all going to depend on what the attorney from Expedia indicates that they can do or not do, and then we'll brief everybody from there.
And if the answer is they're not interested or able to comply, or at least I think we have everybody in the audience probably have contact information for them. it makes sense that the rest of those that are registered in the property rental program would be notified.
Well, I'm
Or
going
can
to
we do
clarify. No, I'm going to say you're dealing with a very small subset. I have approaching 300 people that are in the rental registration program. We have an email list that's growing. I'm happy to work with the people that are on the list and that list. But again, I'm also going to be cautionary on what is our role. If and I hate to say it this way, but I can't, if VRBO decides it does not want to do business in Yountville, that's their business decision. I'm just trying to be honest with people. I'm not trying to be argumentative, but they're a business, and they can choose to operate just like we've had businesses that open up and close based on business conditions. I don't think our ordinance is outrageous because one of the largest platforms has been able to conform. That's why I'm saying Airbnb is actually a larger platform marketing. Or, the council could say we don't want, the other option would be for the council to provide direction to undo the ordinance that you've adopted.
I'm referencing making sure that we get the word out to everybody that's going to be interested. It's not just the folks in this room. So whether it's getting it on the website, getting it out in an email for as many email addresses as we have, it seems to me that we would be having contact information for everybody that's in the rental program. Is that not accurate?
You've got 286 rental registrations.
It's all, okay. I think we have a way to reach out to at least those that have come here in the email chain.
Right. What I'm
that
saying,
have expressed a concern.
There's a current list that gets the updates. We will add. If the council wants me to send a letter to all 286 of the folks, I'll do that.
Well, we have platforms like our own website, nextdoor.com. Significant number of residents use Nextdoor.
But more importantly,
even more use the Yountville Sun.
But I think, Mayor, what's more important is those of you that have been communicating, we have you and we are sending you the updates. If you have others that would like to get added to that list, we're happy to do that, and many of you have forwarded others. So we're at about 20 people on that list right now.
Okay. Since I didn't see any more members of the audience wanting to come forward, I was going to invite questions. So, Mr. Jacobson, if you wanted to come back up one more time, then I want to hear from the council.
One quick moment. I'm sorry. I appreciate Steve's tenacity. The concept is there are other ways of going about. In other words, there are other ways of going about it, in my humble opinion, other than rescinding the ordinance, which is never going to happen and is not appropriate. But it's the negotiation. You said it's up to them when they call back what's going to happen. We've laid down the law to them the way we've configured it, and so there may be some flexibility, but I depend on your negotiating skills for that.
And I think, Peter, I appreciate, we have exercised a framework and have given them room. So we need certain things that they need to do, and within that there's a framework. For example, what information, what matter, frequency are they willing to do? We just need them to tell us what they're willing to do. And that's the challenge for those of you that are involved in business negotiations. We're kind of reaching the point where, without them responding back, we're negotiating against ourselves. And that's the real challenge that we're having. And I have to be very honest. We've had very good conversations, and then nothing follows from them confirming. We've even taken when I took the opportunity to send a draft of them going, this is what we understand from your last conversation, the response I got back was, yes, but we don't have our technical fix ready yet. So I'm trying to understand what that is and what timeline they have. My sense is that they are prioritizing and allocating internal staff resources on priorities within business areas to figure out that. Because again, a community that Manhattan Beach is another community that has an ordinance very much like what we've done. So, and that's a bigger vacation resort community. We get where you're at, and it's a very difficult one for us because we're trying to honor the council's intent at the staff level with what they've asked us to do and try to get it. And like I say, it feels really rough because our own experience with dealing with the Expedia team, It took me a lot of tenacity just to get out of the customer compliance area with somebody to acknowledge that maybe they should talk to me.
So I want the council to have a chance to either ask questions or make comments to staff. Okay, one more. It's always when I threaten to close the public dialogue that somebody has to stand up at the last minute.
Good evening. My name is Chris Parks, and first I'd just like to thank Mayor Mr. Dunbar for opening up a conversation about communication, actually. And I think it is fair to say that there could be room for improvement. And I know that, for example, we drove up from Santa Barbara today for this particular meeting, and we're very grateful that you opened up the discussion like you have. It's really, we really do appreciate council and town. Thank you. But for example, we also didn't realize until I believe it was yesterday or late last night that there was a possibility of a meeting regarding parking. And parking was also something that we would like to sort of learn more about and get involved in. But it came to our attention that it was cancelled at very short notice today, and it's been rescheduled for, I believe, the 16th. So just
to correct you on that one, it was not agendized for
no,
this
let me
meeting.
clarify.
It was
correct.
my ad,
Yeah.
and it was my mistake.
Oh, okay.
But it was my ad, Yountville Sun. That's what he's referring to.
Okay.
Right, thank you. So thanks for clarifying that, and I'm sorry if I was misleading you there. But anyway,
His fault.
So yeah, I think Yountville Sun is a terrific avenue to communicate to the town and homeowners and residents, and also I think the e-notification. Admittedly, we ourselves could do better with that and enroll in it, which we have since. But I feel that communication is so important, and sort of advance notice. It would be grateful if you have some ideas or solutions there. That would be grateful. And I think one other point, and I don't want to repeat myself, but going back to the original notification from VRBO that we received to that we were notified that our listing was pulled from under us. I mean, this happened, the timing actually is very, very interesting because it happened a week before the Memorial Day weekend. And as I see it, this is a critical time where, Americans around the whole country are together with family, friends, and they make important travel decisions. And usually it's at these times throughout, so there's pockets of times throughout the year where people make decisions for long-term rentals and long-term trips, whether it be Yountville, Napa Valley, or Nantucket, or whatever. But I think that what was devastating and actually heartbreaking was that, here we are when, over that Memorial Day weekend, typically, you would see some traction on inquiries. And really, quite frankly, with the way it's going and the difficulties that Steve's having resolving this with VRBO, it's just taking so long that really we're not going to see anything for the rest of the year because people book in advance. And if we start talking about July and then we're into August, September, we're not going to see anything until January, February, March. So it's actually the economic impact is actually quite significant. So again, thank you for your time, and we wish you an enjoyable Independence Day upcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I could speak for staff on this. Staff has put significant time in this, knowing that this is important, not only personally but financially, to all of you that are offering up your homes on these sites. So it's been taken very seriously by all of us. I know Steve, Sandra, and our attorneys have put in quite a bit of time and effort, and it's very frustrating that we're getting the kind of roadblock that we are getting with one platform. And it's frustrating, but we'll continue, to push from our end, I think. And we'll hear an update, I'm sure, by our meeting on the 16th, after the conversation that you hopefully will have on the 8th. I know we're still waiting for questions or comments from the council now, but be sure that you'll continue to get information from us as soon as we know it. So questions or comments from the dais? Anyone like to?
Well, I would just like
Member
to
Mueller.
address the issue about the communication. It's always challenging. We have to look up the agenda when Michelle sends it out every Thursday and be quite prepared, and we have a short time to do that too. So I understand that everyone has to look at lots of different websites, and sometimes the town of Yountville is not your first go-to website, but we have really struggled and put a lot of things in place to try to get the information out. The state of California says you will hang notices in 2 locations. We have had somebody from the Yountville Sun taking notes and reporting on activities. I mean, I could go through a whole laundry list. I hear what you're saying, that sometimes when a big topic comes up, you think, you really haven't heard. But we do struggle with trying to get the information out about what we do. But there's a lot of things going on, and things do happen quickly. So, and that's just really a bit of a preamble to how many people, if we're going to put on an email list or send out letters regarding this topic, do we really go to? Because I have heard similar things from what Steve was saying, that why am I getting this? So they get too much information. On the other hand, I have people tell me, come knock on my door. So it really runs the gamut of how we kind of communicate, too much or, personal service. So I think we've got, I know I see all the emails, and it seems like every time somebody else comes up, we add that email to the list. I'm happy to say, run an ad in the Sun of other people, but I'm a little hesitant to have everybody who is on the rental registration get an email or a letter. It seems a little excessive to me. I mean, if we were having 3 or 4 or 5 people every week wanting to sign up, it would tell me that there's a trend that we really do need to do a lot more. So I'm kind of struggling with how much more outreach do we really need to do? What's a good balance? I don't have an answer, but I think going to everybody, one of our 300 people on the permit list right now, seems a bit much for where we are. But
I believe we also just sent it out in the town newsletter, did we not? In the utility bill? Or
I think what we're doing right now, I think for the interest of this group, is the most effective. We have a targeted list of people that have said, hey, what are you doing? And we're trying to keep you guys that are on that list. And if you know more, that's the best one. Because the broader list, and I think I'm going to go back to Esther made the point, and Mr. Park. The best thing you can do if you really want to is, and I'm just going to repeat it, e-notifier. Go into the town's website. You can select council agendas, zoning design review board, parks and rec information, and you will get it automatically to you. You get to do the decision making of whether it's something you want to open, read, and what level of detail, because the challenge that we have is we don't know what you're interested in until you're interested in it. I mean, that's just, I hate to say it that way, but it's sort of like why didn't you know we wanted to know about this? But we don't. So we try to put stuff out there. Our town website, I kind of laugh because your comment, somebody did say, well, why don't you just, send out a letter to everybody about everything? And that doesn't work either. That's what the agenda actually is. So that's the best thing that we can offer. But I think for this current issue, we have a working group of you. And if the council members know others that come in, we'll add them as we keep working in this particular case to try to resolve Expedia and HomeAway. So if any of you all have my email at this point, so if you know somebody that's not on the list, send it. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to send you all this little primer kit.
Okay. Councilmember Durham?
Yeah, I want to comment on a couple of things. We've all been in contact via email. I'm probably the reason the rest of the council has not responded because they have seen my responses to the group. I want to make a couple of points. First of all, we have two entities working here. We have a person advertising their home for rent, and we have a hosting platform. Those are two different entities doing business in Yountville. And both must independently comply with the ordinances that the town has set forth. So we're not asking that Expedia just do this as an addition to something that the homeowners are doing. Expedia is doing this. We're requiring them to do it as we did with the ordinance that we passed. They have to follow by the rules just like you have to follow by the rules. So anybody engaging in business in this town has to follow by the rules. Those renting their homes and those who are a platform to rent those homes, they have to follow our ordinances as well. So I wanted to point that out. And as I own a hotel. I've owned my hotel for a while now. I choose to do the business that I do based on my experience running that hotel. I also know that my experience with running that hotel has proven that there are many different sites for me to utilize to occupy my hotel. Some work, some don't. It's interesting to me, and you all have the right to run your business as you see fit, but it's interesting to me at the same time as I research all these different rental sites that we can sit here and show Airbnb is renting, but that's not good enough, nor is that right for your business. Now, once again, it's your decision to decide who you rent through. But Airbnb is available right now, so you could rent on there right now. And I'll tell you, I live here full-time. I work from my home. I share a driveway with my neighbors. There's no fence, okay? We can see into each other's yards. My neighbors have their home on Airbnb. They were the second one up there. They've been very successful. They've done very well. I can also tell you, I have some of my hotel rooms on Airbnb. I can pre-review the guests. I can set up every qualification that I want in order to qualify that person before they trickle down to my property. Now, once again, if you just choose to utilize VRBO or an Expedia product, that's your choice to do the business. But I will have to say, but there are many other opportunities for you to be able to make up the finances and get your properties rented here in Yountville. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, you had comments?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your comments, and thank you for the report, Town Manager. Yes, it's frustrating from every side that you look at this, and I am sensitive, as the mayor said, to responding to emails, but I have had some phone calls, so I have had some one-on-one ones about this. But I want to focus right now on the communication. I think Mr. Jacobson made a really good point when he said we want to be a part of the solution. I think that can be very, very helpful in the communication part of it, that if we do have a core list, that perhaps that core list will engage in disseminating it further. I think that could go a long way on the communication. We are working on it. Again, the pace is not what anyone would like. We appreciate your emails. Please keep sending them so that we know what is happening from your end. And I know we will send out to the list we have. Please help us make that a more comprehensive list. And let's just try to work through it.
Thank you. I think we've already had the longest staff informational report, at least this year, if not in recent memory. So I think all the comments that have been made would cover anything that I would add to it. Staff's going to continue to diligently work on all of your behalf, but still recognize that we need to represent the town's interest in our laws. It's been shown that it's not that hard to comply as long as the businesses are willing to put a little effort into doing so. So that's why I was trying to get to next steps and how we can make sure that everyone that's being impacted can be informed. But it does take effort from both sides to receive the information we put out. We do it electronically, we do it in local media, we do it in the utility bill, probably posted other places like in the library or on a bulletin board, I don't know. But it is sometimes tricky to know what will be an item of interest to different segments of our community. So I'm not sure that we have anything further to cover. So Steve will be sure to be reaching out to you after his, maybe sharing the attorney's contact information would be of value to her clients. I'm not suggesting that, I just was the thought. Ryan's probably cringing over there. Okay, thank you all for being here tonight. I think you can anticipate hearing even before our July 16 meeting for sure, as soon as we have any news, even if it's waiting to still hear, you'll be informed. We try to make sure that any items are noticed as soon as we can, as soon as we know they're going to be agendized, we let you know. So, and I would definitely recommend eNotifier as well. You're able to focus on the things that matter to you, and hopefully all of it does, but some are higher priority. So thank you all very much for your feedback. We're going to move on now to our two administrative and regular items, 10A and B. The first one, 10A, as was alluded to in our proclamation earlier, this has to do with the Napa County collaboration regarding climate change and the initiation at the county level to potentially create a countywide subcommittee. So we're going to have a conversation about that. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, the action item before you is to consider appointing or designating 2 council members to the regional county collaboration effort. And as I pointed out to you, we are agency number 5. However, we will be the last agency bringing forward names. St. Helena had already identified that. They'll be adopting their proclamation next. So unless you have more questions, this is a fairly typical regional process where there are 2 elected members from the 5 jurisdictions and then the county, and then various staff support. Obviously, part of the collaborative process will be to determine where it goes and what may come of it, but there are no commitments other than to attend and participate in the regional discussion.
And I would add to that from the county at least, they're requesting that mayors be a part of the 2. The second person is certainly up for our consideration. I have been following this conversation for quite some time, so I'm certainly happy to be one of the 2. And if there's another member, I know Councilmember Dornbecker has regularly shown interest in this topic, but I also know that if a meeting is going to be called this month, she's not here. So I just wanted to throw that out. If we want to consider myself and Councilmember Dornbecker, or if somebody else wants to volunteer, let's talk about it. Councilmember Durham?
I like those suggestions. I'd be willing to step in for her while she's gone to get her the additional information when she returns.
Okay. Vice Mayor, question? Or Councilmember Mueller?
Well, I'm just going to say I think I would be a very poor choice because I have been on a personal mission with many people to try to get the burning stopped in the Napa Valley. If we're going to worry about climate change, it is just beyond my comprehension how we allow the burning of all these vines, which emit just a ton of emissions, when the answer is, well, there could be, pests or bacteria that we're burning. When I request any of those reports or even any comments or suggestions that might be the reason they're burning, it doesn't seem to appear. So, as you can tell, I would have I would have a personal mission and be not a very good team player because of my personal frustration with the burning of the vines. Thank goodness the smudge pots have gone into our past. So I would strongly recommend that you don't pick me.
Okay. So noted. Vice Mayor, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm actually prepared to make a motion if there are no other comments.
Sure. Do we need a formal motion or just direction? Formal motion? Okay. Because it doesn't exist yet, but if it does exist, this is what's going to happen. Okay.
So I move that we appoint Mayor Dunbar and Councilmember Dornbecker to participate in the Napa County collaboration to address climate change.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I think you should add the clarifying.
And
so
including Councilmember Durham to attend if and when Councilmember Dornbecker is absent.
How about just as an alternate for either of us?
As an alternate for either of our appointees.
Okay.
A group resolution.
Do you want to add to that resolution that Councilmember Mueller has absolutely no interest?
Yes. Yes.
No, just kidding. Let's not, strike that, Michelle.
Because.
All right, so there is a motion. There's a motion. Is there a second
I'll
to that?
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, I believe. So it will be noted that Councilmember Dornbecker and myself, with Councilmember Durham as the alternate, for the collaborative ad hoc committee.
And
We have
if
go ahead.
one more comment. If anybody would like to, I could provide an executive summary or an extremely detailed summary about the burning in the valley. If anybody on the committee would like any additional information, please let me know.
I would be happy to take that with us when we have a meeting assigned, so I'll let you know. Thank you. Next up is another committee consideration. This one has to do with the Napa Unified School District and the 7-Eleven committee that is being formed as they consider potential closure of at least 2, if not all 4, of their what they call small schools. That would include Yountville Elementary School. So, Sandra, do you have a brief report to lead us into this discussion?
I'll start.
Okay.
The action item before you is slightly different than the last one. As you've pointed out, the Napa Valley Unified School District has publicly announced and included that 2 schools must close in order for their adopted budget to be balanced. State law has a process that requires the 7-Eleven committee, and 7-Eleven means the number of people that are appointed between 7 and 11, that has to be appointed to advise and provide direction and comment to the school district whenever a school closure is recommended. And I'm sharing that only because that's a little different. In the past, when we've had some discussions about Yountville Elementary, we had some advisory groups, but they were focused on what could we do to keep the school. At this point, the district has made a determination, as you alluded to, that some schools are most likely to be closed. So that's a formal structure required by state law. The school district also will ultimately, just like you do, determine who they appoint to the committee. So the action item related for you tonight is, one, does the council want to consider putting a council member in nomination? They will have to complete the application, but it would go with their ability to identify themselves as an elected official from Yountville as opposed to just a member at large. So that's the first consideration, and the second would be, if you do, who might that be? By background, and I will let Sandra, we provided a little bit of background on the zoning of what the existing rule is, because there's been some inquiries about that from the council. So again, it's mostly informational item. It is zoned public facilities. There's a wide range of what could be done, but only with the direct consent of the town. Otherwise, it has to stay to the core purpose. Happy to answer more questions, but really the town retains a lot of control. And the requirement, if the school district is going to do something with the property, there's also a very formal school disposal surplus property process of which the town would be a participant and have the opportunity to look at acquiring the property.
Yeah, to be clear, this is not an appointment. This is to authorize one of us to even apply for consideration. The school board and the superintendent are the ones that will make the appointments to this committee based on the meeting that the vice mayor and I and Councilmember Dornbecker attended a couple weeks ago. There will be more likely the 11 than the 7 on the 7-11 committee. There is a very specific criteria of demographics that they are looking to populate on the committee. There is not a so-called elected official slot per se, but they are looking for community leaders, parents, and a few other categories. And we have discussed since that meeting trying to get somebody from our council to be considered for that based on the close connection that the entire town has with the school. Vice Mayor, did you want to follow up with any additional information?
Yes, I have, as the mayor said, I've been to a meeting with Dr. Musetti and have started to establish a relationship. I've been taking the school board agenda for over a year now, sort of keeping up with it. And I do think that we, as a town, and our school, we represent a really unique ecosystem. We are the proverbial three-legged school. We have our school, our stool, we have our school, our parents, and our town. We are really interconnected. So I do think that it would be a good idea for us to continue to show that interest as a town, as a community, in helping to make a good decision for our school and our community. And I would, because I have an interest and I have some background now and a pretty good learning curve, I would be happy to accept that position to put my application in on behalf of our council and town.
Thank you. Other comments about this? Thoughts?
I have questions.
Yeah. Councilmember Durham.
So what is the 7-Eleven commission going to decide? Which two schools to close?
They're going to make a recommendation, and Steve, you can jump in if you need to. It's required by state law that they are formed to consider any school closures. They will be the committee that evaluates the 4 schools that fall within the small school category, which is 300 or fewer students. The board has already adopted their budget going forward, which includes the $1.5 million or so that would be saved in closing 2 schools. The 7-Eleven committee is going to evaluate, if 2 schools, which 2, and there are certain criteria they're supposed to consider, part of it being location, the enrollment numbers, and other things. they will be making a recommendation. The committee makes a recommendation to the school board, who will ultimately make the decision. So they're tasked over the next few months. And I believe there's a timeline that the superintendent actually gave at that meeting. I don't remember what it is exactly. By October, they would come back, they think, not knowing how many meetings there would be. Could be hopefully several, certainly. But by October, they hope to have a recommendation to give to the school board. The board, I believe, is on summer recess right now, at least in July. So that's what they're going to be tasked to do, evaluate all 4 of the small schools and consider a recommendation. They could end up recommending more than 2 or fewer than 2, but if they do that, then the Board of Trustees has to figure out where the savings are going to come from that they have already approved in their budget, because they're trying to cut expenses.
So is this PTA of Yountville Elementary, the Parents Association, are they putting together people that they want on this commission as well?
I'm sure they are. They were at the meeting a couple Mondays ago, and I'm sure they are. I don't know which names they're going to put forward, but they made it quite clear that they were going to be pursuing that.
And so, okay. Are these meetings open? Are they agendized?
Public meetings.
I'm going to be
I believe they are.
I'm going to be completely honest, and I'll tell you where I'm headed with all this.
We'll confirm about the public meeting, but I'm pretty sure that it has to be public.
It seems like it, but my concern is that we take away, by even nominating someone from a political position in the town, we're taking away space from a potential parent, a potential active member of the community who is day-to-day involved with this as well. So that's just my main concern talking about this, and these are why I'm putting out these questions right now.
Good question. My answer to that would be there will be a very personal and, I suspect, emotional perspective that parents bring to the committee. And I believe that somebody from this council could bring not only the passion for the community, but also a little bit more maybe objective. And it's hard to say that, not knowing exactly how the conversation is going to go. But we are in a position of making difficult decisions on a regular basis and making decisions that we have to consider our friends and neighbors. And to have only parents or mostly parents, it might be more difficult. I worry that what would happen is, depending on which school your child or children go to, that's the one that you as a parent are going to advocate for.
Of course.
And to have someone that looks a little bit more generically community-wide, then that might be...
That's a thin line there, though.
Oh, of course.
I mean,
of course.
Whichever 5 of us were appointed there are going to do the same exact thing as a parent, which at the same time, I'd rather have the passion of that parent. And obviously, I mean, I think of Samantha. Her son's no longer there. She's very active in the community. She was very active in the school. I would like to send someone like that. That's not my choice, but I don't want to kick out that opportunity of that person if the PTA or the Yountville School or the Yountville School community wanted to do that. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, Vice Mayor?
A couple of things. One is back to what the charge of the committee will be. There was a question at the meeting from a parent, and it was, well, what data can the committee look at? And the basic answer is anything. And the follow-up question was, well, can the committee recommend that none of the 4 schools is closed and that another school gets closed and the children get transferred? And the answer to that was basically a yes. So the committee is a data gathering and recommending kind of committee. And as to, I completely hear what you're saying on no one wants to put someone else out of a spot. But I will say there were a number of Yountville parents and teachers there, and every one of them came up and said how happy they were that we were there. And so I think us putting someone forward would show to the community we continue to be invested in the school and the kids there. And I also think if someone not a parent, because there will be non-parents on the committee, I'm pretty sure. If someone not a parent gets on the committee, I think someone from our council would be best positioned, because we do enjoy a great relationship with the school and the parents and the PTO and PTA. I think we would be well positioned to be a gatherer of that kind of data and input also.
And I just quickly called up to try to get a more specific definition. The purpose is to review and analyze all of the real property that is owned by the district and determine what real property could be designated as excess or surplus that is no longer needed for school purposes. They would present a report to the Board of Trustees recommending uses for the surplus property or how to dispose of the property, e.g. sale, lease, etc. And so there is a very kind of practical perspective of it, which is analyzing the property and their values and how they can best serve the needs of the entire district. So the categories that they're looking for, persons on the committee who can represent each of the following ethnic groups, age groups, socioeconomic, business community, landowners or renters, teachers, administrators, parents of students, persons with expertise in environmental impact, building codes, land use planning, legal contracts, zoning and other land use restrictions. So there would, I think, definitely be some value in having a perspective that a council member could bring that a community member or parent may or may not have. Samantha certainly has a very unique skill set, and I would
I just brought her up
as an example, and it would not surprise me at all if she's going to apply for that, even if she doesn't have a child in any of the schools. So. You have any thoughts, Councilmember Mueller?
Well, my tendency is certainly I'm agreeing with Councilmember Durham. I really see that our role would, and I'm remembering back, I'm losing track of years. What was it, 6 or 7 years ago, when the same issue really kind of came up about Yountville School closing? Was that about right, I guess?
It's happened multiple times.
Yeah, multiple times, but that was kind of the last. And there was, we made, as council members and the mayor, we made many, many trips to the school board meetings. We were quite aware of everything. We reported on it. We were very involved in, some of the thoughts that actually turned out to be something that I think had a real impact, raising the money. I think it was Lewis who took the lead in that, and there was a lot of community participation. I think this, to me, is something a little bit different, and I certainly hope there are some people in Yountville. This might be one of those things where, as a council, we might want to say this is a good time to run an ad and make sure that everybody who could possibly know about it, because it's on the radar, it's not on the radar. We've got some, pretty incredible talent in town, but, letting people really know this is out and it's going to be coming up for a volunteer. I would kind of prefer to go that way and us play a different role rather than sending one person. I would imagine would just be one officially applying for this. It's a little outside of our normal 2x2 that I think we do for different reasons and different purposes. So I don't really think that one of us possibly taking a slot, it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do to me, when there are going to be a lot of other, I think, people with unique skill sets that they are going to be looking at in demographics. So it just seems outside of what I think our role is.
Okay, just to follow up, again on the website, expect the committee to be in place by September, complete its work by December. Yeah, so that has pushed back a little bit. Application submittal deadline by September 16th, and then recommendations to the board later in September, and then October, November would be the, they're looking at least 4 to 5 meetings according to this schedule here. I would disagree with being silent and being in the background on this. Having been in the forefront of it when we've discussed this before and taking the lead, frankly, on negotiating with the district back when we did create the Yountville School Foundation, that then Vice Mayor Chilton took the lead on that. But it took getting there, and it took having myself representing this council at the time and the community to have a greater impact than the impassioned pleas of parents that had children in those schools, some of which ultimately were closed. And I do think that somebody coming from this council carries additional weight, frankly. We would be the only community that would have an elected official, most likely, representing on this committee. That's one of the things that makes us unique. It's actually a selling point for us trying to work with the District Board of Trustees on not closing Yountville Elementary School. And it would send, I think, a very strong message if we sent a council member to represent our community. It does not preclude them from putting another parent from Yountville, whether it be from the PTA or anywhere else, on the committee, knowing that they're looking to get representation from at least those 4 schools. But the other 3 are all in Napa, and that makes a difference. So I would absolutely encourage we have representation. It's up to the superintendent and the board if they don't want to pick us over parents. But if we don't at least apply, then I think that sends a message that we don't care enough to at least apply. But I get what you're saying about not wanting to take the place of somebody else. It could absolutely be very qualified, but it doesn't preclude those people from, as the Vice Mayor said, working in unison with one of us. So I would encourage that we do submit an application, and knowing that the Vice Mayor has already been in the meetings that I've had also with the superintendent and trustees and other members of the district staff, there would not be a learning curve, I don't think. The fact that you've offered it up, that's also nice. So I would support the Vice Mayor being authorized to put in an application. So it sounds like we're kind of in a 2-2. Unfortunately, there are 4 of us here. We also, though, with a September deadline date, may have time to wait until we get our 5th council member back. If they're, I mean, I support the idea. The Vice Mayor obviously volunteered. If neither of you wants us to pursue it, then we should table this, I think, until we have our 5th council member back here to ultimately make that decision.
And I'm fine with that if we come back too with information what the school and is planning to do and the local communities.
Other parents and others.
Yeah, I'd like to have that discussion as well then.
Okay. So, Councilmember Muller, do you have any other last?
No, that seems reasonable to me.
So one thing that we're going to need to do is confirm that the dates that are on their website are still accurate. And we'll come back. We'll have, I think we can just plan an update on July 16. Even though Councilmember Dornbecker won't be back, we could at least by email to Steve, just to brief you on if we do in fact have until September to apply. And if so, then we can hold off, do a little more research about who else might be applying, and then reconsider this when Councilmember Dornbecker's back. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to, I got to get off the school district website now and get back to our next agenda item. We've already done item 11, staff informational reports. Moving on to council meeting reports and comments. Upper Valley Waste Management Authority. Councilmember Mueller, do you have any report?
Councilmember, Vice Mayor Dorman attended for me, but I've had many conversations afterwards. I think the only thing kind of to mention to everybody is that typically in July is when we set the rates, but because of a lot of issues going on up at Clover Flats and a lot of the new things that we're working on for organics, we've pushed the rate setting back. We should probably have that at our August meeting, so the rates will probably be set by September, but they will be retroactive to July.
Okay. Councilmember Term.
No, of course they will.
At least until. Okay. League of California Cities update. Vice Mayor, did you want to report out? I know Councilmember Dornbecker also attended the League's executive forum and then leadership workshop.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there were three of us who attended, the mayor, Councilmember Dornbecker, and I attended also. And one reason I really wanted to attend this was because the topics are really on point for Yountville. There were a number of sessions, and I just want to touch on the ones that really speak to us: emergency preparation and planning, housing, workforce, land use, and cannabis. Emergency preparation and planning, as you know, we're working on this all the time, and I thought the best quote that I got was a city manager came and said, "We thought we were ready, it happened, and we found out we weren't." And so the moral of her story was keep planning, keep practicing, and so we are taking that to heart. On the workforce, everybody is having a lot of the same problems we're having here in the Valley, and a real theme was sort of a school to industry pipeline. And again, we are working to make that happen here in the Valley, so it was good to collaborate and get some new ideas on that. On land use, again, and it was particularly pointed at the issues we're facing of sort of a push-down land use where maybe things are happening to us that we have to react to. And my best takeaway line from that was either be at the table or be on the menu. And so we are working proactively to not be on the menu. Cannabis was an all-day workshop, which was really very interesting. Again, my main takeaway was it is unique to every city and town. West Hollywood was one of the presenters. They are the same size as we are. I think they have 40 dispensaries and other accessory businesses. That's not going to happen in Yountville. So it's sometimes good to go and see things that make you know how things could be if you don't keep working at it like we do to make it work for our community. Housing, so many bills were alive and then they weren't, but they're coming back. We heard a lot about local government grants and different monies that will be available. And again, it's good to get that information, bring it back. We are going to work hard to try to bring some of those dollars to help us out as best we can, whether just for Yountville or regionally.
Thank you. And Steve, do you want to add something to that?
Well, I just want to amplify one thing the Vice Mayor said. The city of West Hollywood is the same geographic footprint as the town of Yountville, but its density and population size, they're 30-some thousand. So just little clarification for somebody that's out there going, but it just shows you on the same footprint, property-wise, communities can be very different. And I think that's what you were really trying to point out. And, each community is working through cannabis regulation in a way that is trying to be appropriate to their community.
And those are not all retail dispensaries. They were talking about permits that included manufacturing, testing, dispensaries also, but still a significant number. But there are some small communities. There was a beach community, I can't remember which beach community it was, it's in the Big Sur area, that has embraced cultivation, manufacturing, the whole thing as a significant financial
Right. There's some that's, and this is causing, I mean, there's another theme that's sort of emerging in some of the cannabis discussion because, as you mentioned, there are some communities that are looking at indoor cultivation as a way to renovate some of their old warehouse districts and some areas that are underperforming. The irony is they're not necessarily allowing a dispensary, but they're allowing the cultivation. What we're seeing now also is an emerging trend of, in some communities, political activists that are potentially bringing things to the ballot box if they see communities that are not necessarily moving as quickly or timely in the direction. I'm just saying I don't know if that came up in the workshop, but that's another one that's being monitored because unlike some other groups, this has been a politically active group, and now you're starting to see some of the business components as well as some of the residents that may have an interest. So that's just another theme that some of the working groups are monitoring as well when it comes to cannabis. And actually we're seeing some of that locally, if you may recall, with the Napa County cultivation initiative. They took voter initiative or petition just recently.
The Cannabis Association, yeah, they're trying to get a ballot measure for
I'm just saying,
next year.
you're starting, I guess the takeaway I would say is you're starting to see, in addition to the cities trying to figure things out, there's some political positioning in some communities that may push that even further because they're not happy with the direction one way or the other. You know, there may be some folks that want to put a referendum to undo something that a council has done, and then another community that puts a referendum saying this can be permitted here. And I will tell you, as a manager, there's nothing scarier to me than referendum land use planning. It is just not a good thing.
True. Also, I wanted to, we attended several of the same workshops, but the civic engagement was one more, land use planning, and then the housing and the cannabis ordinance policies, all very interesting. And then I also attended the board of directors meeting that followed the leadership workshop. I did want to update under this item, just had my weekly league executive officer call this morning. There are updates to the housing budget trailer bill, SB 102 and AB 101. They're basically the same bills in the Senate and the Assembly regarding certified housing elements. There is significant money, more than really has ever been made available, $2.5 billion in funding to address homelessness and housing throughout California. There are incentives that are still being defined to encourage increased housing production, and there are also penalties that are being defined for non-compliant housing elements. There is going to be a court that will process housing element compliance. So apparently the state superior court is going to be, and you might know this already or be hearing about it also, Ryan, that this is basically a negotiated trailer bill content that the League of California Cities was very active in. But the concern about taking transportation dollars from non-compliant cities was of great concern, and now there is at least a new process being proposed that it would go to the court for consideration. The department, let's see, the incentive programs are still being determined, but they'll be releasing a list of pro-housing cities that are already compliant. There's also talk of money going not only to cities directly. 100 of the 2.5 billion, 125 million would go to cities and counties, and 125 million would go to councils of governments. There's 500 million for infill infrastructure grants. That's something that could be very interesting for us as it relates to the California Veterans Home. There's money specifically for counties under 250,000 population, $90 million for those. We would fall into that category. Substantial money, over $650 million for homelessness, housing assistance, and prevention programs. And so there was actually a hearing today in the Senate, and the Assembly is expected to take these bills up, or their bill up, later this week. So we should be hearing any day on the outcomes of those. Then I did want to talk about the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I just attended for 5.5 days. The first day was actually part of the Climate Mayors Summit. There were about 60 mayors from around the country that spent the day learning best practices about innovations related to climate change, related to transportation, like electric vehicles, especially transit buses. And they were showing off a fleet of transit buses that the city of Honolulu has already put online. Financial mitigations related to climate change, philanthropic partnerships. It was very interesting to hear how much money is coming in the philanthropic world toward climate-related issues. So they're not just waiting for people to come and ask for money. They're proactively going out and trying to find what they consider to be worthy recipients. And there was an announcement from, principally from the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, about a new electric vehicle collaborative. So those of us on the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, I found that quite interesting. It's allowing for cities to basically get better purchasing power by ordering more electric vehicles that could be dispersed through multiple cities instead of individual jurisdictions having to, or authorities having to do it on their own. Calistoga Mayor Canning and Napa Mayor Tekel were both there also. So with Mayor Canning being our NVTA chair right now, we made sure to meet as many people there as we could. Also, as part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, there were some very interesting speakers, including Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, who was speaking about her father, President John F. Kennedy, who actually met at the Conference of Mayors back in June of 1963. And he was speaking about civil rights back then, I can understand. But she was quite a compelling speaker. And the Second Lady of the United States, Karen Pence, was there as well, talking about city engagement. Topics, stop me if you've heard these before: homelessness and housing, philanthropy that can help with partnerships in cities. There was a very interesting session on the national recycling crisis and what's happened, especially since China has stopped taking the U.S.'s recycling products, but also the opportunities that have been created because of that, having domestic industries popping up about recycling and actually taking recyclables and recycling them into other products.
Where's that happening?
There are quite a few cities apparently, and
The outside of California.
yes. And then the last one I was going to reference was an interesting session on helping veterans overcome the challenges that they face returning to civilian life and prospering in communities. That was most applicable here. So there were some good contacts made in all of those. There was also a tour of the Arizona Memorial and the USS Missouri, and I received a flag that was flown over both of those. All the mayors received, there were about 200 in total at the conference. We all received flags that were flown over those two historic locations. So I've mentioned to the town manager that we need to find an appropriate place to display or fly that flag. Also, in the spirit of climate resiliency, I received a certificate that a tree was planted in my and all the other mayors that were present on all of our behalfs. So we're now part of the foliage in and around Honolulu. So We might need to talk about a sister city relationship. They're a little bigger than we are. Just kidding, Steve, don't worry.
A future agenda item request?
Yeah. You want to talk about infill and some of the other issues they have there? Anyway, so those are my comments about those conferences. Are there any other reports or announcements from council? Fireworks are on for Thursday. The Veterans Home is not having their annual activities throughout the day, but the town is still going to hold the fireworks. About 9:20, 9:30, I think, is typically when they go off.
You might want to be around 9:15.
As soon as it's dark enough. Okay, well, with that, I think we have all of our public business. We do have a closed session item that we will need to consider next. So seeing no other business for our open meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to our next meeting of Tuesday, July 16th. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so we're going to, well, actually, we have to do that after our closed session. Never mind. So hold that thought.
Yes.
And just put a time marker on that one, Michelle. We'll go ahead and go out of our regular meeting into closed session. And I don't believe we have